All right. Welcome, everyone. This Sunday, we are speaking on the book of Luke this morning. I might take this mic out. The book of Luke is basically a chapter in the Gospels where you have 4 Gospels in the Bible, if you don't know. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. They all give a story about Jesus. They're all different stories about Jesus, and they all have different audiences and different purposes behind them. One of the things in Luke that he is really focused on is hospitality and about eating and drinking together. And one thing that they actually accuse Jesus of is being a glutton and a drunkard in Luke, because he's always hanging out and eating and drinking with people. So I personally like Jesus in Luke because I like to eat and drink with people. So it just happens that it's also been the book that we've been in over the last month and a half. Some other stories that you may remember from previous weeks about hospitality, those of you who were here, Jesus talked about when he sent his disciples out to different villages to heal them and to teach them and to sit with them and eat and drink with them. He said, go to those towns that accept you, and those towns that do not accept you, shake the dust off your feet at them. It's worse for them than it is for Sodom and Gomorrah, these other towns that God destroyed in the Old Testament. Then we heard about the Good Samaritan. The Good Samaritan came along, and he picked a man up off the street who had been robbed and beaten, and he took him to an inn and had him fed and clothed and taken care of. Then we talked about Mary and Martha. Once again, Jesus is in their house, eating with them, sitting with them. Mary is sitting there looking at Jesus, and she wants to just be with Jesus, while Martha is in the kitchen doing all the work, trying to get Jesus fed and all his disciples and everything. And we talked about how Jesus liked having Mary there, being in his presence and focusing on him. But we also talked about the necessity for the Marthas in our church and in our communities as well. And so we are continuing that arc of hospitality that is in Luke, and it starts with Luke 14, chapter 1. I'll read it. You can follow along on the screen. Am I in this? All right, great. It happened that when he went into the house of one of the leaders of the Pharisees on the Sabbath to eat bread, they were watching him closely. No problem. And he began speaking a parable to the invited guests. And when he noticed how they had been picking out the places of honor at the table, saying to them, when you are invited by someone to a wedding feast, do not take the place of honor, for someone more distinguished than you may have been invited. And he who invited you both will come and say to you, give your place to this man. And then in disgrace, you proceed to occupy the last place. But when you are invited, go and recline at the last place, so that when the one who has invited you comes, he may say to you, friend, move up higher. Then you will have honor in the sight of all who are at the table with you. For everyone who exalts himself or herself will be humbled, and he or she who humbles themselves will be exalted. And Jesus also went on to say to the one who had invited him, when you give a luncheon or a dinner, do not invite your friends or your brothers or your relatives or your rich neighbors. Otherwise, they may also invite you in return, and that will be your repayment. But when you give a reception, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed, since they do not have the means to repay you, for you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. Jesus is giving us 2 different tasks here in this 11 verses, or however much they were. The first task is how to be a good guest. When you go to someone's house, I did this actually last night. We had Bible study at the Kim's house for some of the CIA students and the worship team, and they had dinner there, and I literally, it was on the floor, because it was Korean food, and I literally just picked the open spot, and then I realized I'm sitting at the head of the table. I just totally defeated my sermon tomorrow. So I did this last night, but you're not supposed to sit at the seat of honor. Fortunately, in that house, everyone is equal during those Bible studies, so it wasn't that big a deal. But the point isn't where you actually sit during your dinner. The point that God is really trying to make here is that, look, you're not that big a deal. You're not so great. So don't just put yourself into this position where you think you're all that, or whatever they say these days. That if you approach any situation with a sense of humility, then you will naturally be raised up to a position of greatness if that's God's purpose for you. So this isn't always easy for me. In some cultures, it's very easy to be kind of submissive or laid back or stand in the background and maybe do the work that needs to be done without getting praise for it or whatever. Well, for me personally, I'm up here. I'm more of a front person, and with that kind of personality, it can be very easy to want to always be involved, or want to always have a comment, or always have a suggestion, or always make my point known. So that's a struggle I have had. Many of you may have similar struggles, vice versa. So when you come as a guest, just some basic rules. Always bring something with you, which I also didn't do last night. But if it's a bottle of wine or some fruit or flowers or whatever, just grab some like $5 thing, even though it doesn't really equal what your host has put out to invite you. It's still a nice gesture. So just put that in your rule book for common courtesy. It's not necessarily a biblical teaching, but just do that. Wine at my house is always good. On that same note, God's not telling us, okay, just be a good guest, sit back in the back, be quiet. That's not really what he's saying, because he also wants us to be a good host, okay? But when he asks us to be a good host, it's hilarious. Think about this party. You're having a wedding, and your brothers, sisters can't come. Your friends can't come. Like, what is Jesus talking about? Don't invite your family. Don't invite your friends. Don't invite rich people. Invite blind people and sick people and poor people. You're like, I don't know. That doesn't sound like a very fun party. So it's a real challenge. I'm not sure that I would actually listen in this situation, because I would want to have a party with people that I want to be around, and Jesus is right, people that will eventually throw a party that I'll get to come to. Isn't that kind of what we do? You go to, if some of you go to bars, I don't know, but you go, if you're 21 and you go to a bar and someone buys you a round of drinks, so then you're always like, kind of expected you buy the next round. Or you take someone out to dinner, and it's kind of expected that if they pay this time, you pay next time. We're always on this kind of reward understanding, where I give to you, and then, come on, you give back to me. Jesus is saying that's not exactly how we're supposed to be doing it. We're supposed to be giving, both as individuals and as a community and as a church, to those who actually need it a little more than just, we feed each other each week. This Sunday we bring food, and next Sunday you bring food, and next Sunday you bring food, and we all just stay fat and happy together. While the poor and the blind and the sick and anyone else who might need food stays outside and doesn't get the food that we keep eating every week. So that's a challenge for us, and it's not easy. I don't think it's a lot easier to be around people that you feel comfortable around. Be giving to people that you feel comfortable with, rather than stretching yourselves and pushing yourselves out there. I don't do it all the time. Interacting with the poor, things like that. I mean, most of my interaction with people who need me are people who are in jail, or people who are in trouble with the law, and oftentimes I make them pay me to help them. So it's not an easy task to actually go out and help people. It's just not. But Jesus is telling us that that's what we're supposed to do, so take it for there. All right, now I want to talk a little bit more about my own personal journey. I think it might help you all wherever you are in your life. One thing you will know at this church with me, I don't care who you are, what you believe, what your sexual preference is, how much you like to party or not party or whatever it is. I don't really care. I'm still going to love you, and I'm still going to be here for you, and you can come to me with pretty much anything going on in your life, and I'm not going to judge you or think you're a bad person or whatever, because I guarantee you, no matter what you think this big problem is in your life, someone else, either me or someone else I've been close to, has dealt with it before, and it's not going to be a new thing, and you're not an awful person because you did A, B, C, D, or whatever. Okay? So just know that as a general overall thing, I will hopefully always be approachable no matter what is going on in your life. Okay? So, my story. I grew up in Georgia in the Methodist Church, and down there it's pretty conservative, not in a negative sense, but I remember when we were growing up, people always said, they will know that we are Christians by our love. This was like a song we sang. And they will know we are Christians by our love, yes, they'll know. So they would tell us, like, go out when you're sitting on an airplane or when you're in school or when you're on the bus or whatever, and just be so loving that people will just know Jesus. Like, how can you be that loving? It's Jesus. Holy cow, I want that. That's what they kind of taught us. And I came to find out as I kept growing up that, yes, there are people in the church that are so loving and that give so much. Many people in this church, I'm amazed by all of the food, where it comes from, just shows up every week. No, there's people doing that, like working hard to do that. So love and giving is a very signature part of churches. And people have blessed me so much in all the churches I've been a part of, and which is why I'm even a part of your church now, is some of my attempts to hopefully give back and educate and be a mentor for the next generation. But there's also a lot of stingy people in churches, and there's a lot of, myself included, when I was growing up. Like I guess some of it was I was a student and I didn't really have money, but even if I did, I'd probably still be stingy sometimes, People in church, for whatever reason, whether it's like the puritanical, like economic upbringing of the church in the U.S. that has made us stingy, it has allowed us to build awesome properties and do things like that, but at the same time, we are kind of stingy. So I was going out as a young 19-year-old or whatever, and I was waiting tables, and I would see this. I would have these people who were there, and they're ordering like margaritas and eating plates of ribs, and they don't care, it's $100 tab, and they're throwing me like $15, $20. I'm like, what? $20? Like, this is amazing. And then you have other people who are there, and they're like ordering water, want more bread, salad, nothing, hoping their bill is like less than $15, and then they like make it like exactly 10%, so I'd end up with like 95 cents or something, like, and then they spent like an hour and a half there, and it was, and then they'd be like, Jesus loves you on the bottom of the receipt or something. Oh God. So that happens. I mean, I've probably been like that. Many of you may know people like that, and that's just a slight anecdote. The point is, there are a lot of non-Christian people that are a lot nicer than us, a lot more loving than us, a lot more giving than us, if you're a Christian or whatever that means. So just being super loving and expecting people to come to Jesus, I started to realize maybe that's not how it works. I studied abroad in Europe, and we had a bunch of students from the U.S. We all went over to Europe for a summer, and it was awesome. But I was like one of 2 or 3 people that had gone to church or grew up in the church, and everyone else on the trip was like more giving than us, nicer than us. I was like, something's wrong here. But then I started to continue to kind of take on some of these things. That's where I learned, like, all right, if someone buys you a drink, try to buy them a drink, or if someone invites you to their house, try to bring something at least. Because I used to just go to people's house and be like, sweet, free food, like, yeah, I'm coming, So try to just do little things, and it makes a huge difference. So then I went around the world, did some other stuff. I ended up in this is a funny story. I was in Haiti back in 2002, and before the earthquake, and we went, I was there with a missionary, stayed there for like a week. I was in college, I think it was a sophomore or something, and I wanted to go on a mission trip because I was going to graduate soon. I must have been a junior. I was going to graduate soon, and I wanted to maybe go be a missionary. Yeah, that'd be cool. So I send out all these emails to all these missionaries I found on the internet in Haiti. And I get responses back, yeah, you can come here if you want, you can come here if you want. And nothing really felt right. Then I get a handwritten letter from some missionary who's like, I don't have a computer, the lights aren't even on here. I sent this to my friend in Chicago who's now sending it down to you in Georgia. And I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta go see this guy. So I went to Haiti to do that. I wouldn't recommend some of these things I've done to people, but I went down to Haiti, and they actually had a coup d'etat while I was down there. And a coup d'etat, if you don't know, basically they're trying to overthrow the government. So some guy drives a tractor into the jail, and the whole country just blows up. People are burning tires in the street. And because back then and even now, there's not really communication lines going through the island. It's very poor, very, very poor. So there's not Wi-Fi everywhere, and your cell phone, back especially 14 years ago, didn't really work, things like that. So people hear a story about something happening in Port-au-Prince, which is 10 hours from wherever they are, and they're like, yeah, and they just go crazy and start burning stuff too, even though they have no idea what necessarily is going on. So I was in Haiti, and we're traveling up to this remote church up in the mountains of Haiti. If you don't know much about Haiti, it's connected to the Dominican Republic, and it's really poor, back from forever, starting with French slavers, but that's a different story. So it's still really poor. So we were going up. They have one road that goes up the whole island, and it's literally smaller than the road out in front of the church, the little windy road. And so when it's filled with burning tires, you can't really drive your bus. So we go 3 miles away from the missionary's house, burning tires, and I'm like, all right, well, I guess we got to turn around and go back. No. As soon as we get out of that truck, they're walking around the tires and getting in another truck. And so we basically did that for about 12 hours. I had one point, I'm on a bridge, and people are ripping film out of my camera because they thought I was a reporter, and another point where in the back of a dump truck because all the buses were full. And long story short, we end up in the middle of the night getting to this mountain and there's no lights there, it's pitch black, and the missionary is 50 or 60 years old. He's not in the best health. He can't walk up this mountain, so he's the only person that speaks English that I've seen in a week. And he's like, just go up this mountain. I'm like, what? With this guy? And he's like, yeah, just go up the mountain. And I'm like, okay. I'm with this guy named Moral Yan, I think. And he was carrying the missionary's bag, and me. We're just climbing up this mountain in the middle of the night. At one point, there was a donkey right in front of my face, and I was like, whoa, where did that come from? Anyway, we get to the top of this mountain. There's a brush arbor little building with one light hanging in it, and that's where they're having church, and there's little kids everywhere and stuff. So I ended up spending a few days up there, and the point of this whole story was they were so hospitable. These people who lived in the middle of nowhere had never seen an airplane or a television or a skyscraper or an elevator or anything. When I got there, they had a chicken tied to the front door, and then we had chicken for lunch. The kids would climb the trees and cut down coconuts and bring them in and give them to me. They would wash, they'd bring bowls. They have running water. They would bring bowls in, and we'd wash our feet. And one story, the pastor of the church up there was like, glow, that means water. And he wanted to take me to take a bath, because it's been like 3 days, and I haven't like washed or anything. So he's like, glow, he's going to go find water. So I said, okay, all right, let's go find some glow. That sounds great. And he had his cow with him, so the cow could drink some water too. And we're walking through these hills, right? And we get to like this puddle that's like literally this big around. And he's like, glow. And then he like takes his pants off, and he has like leopard print, like Speedo thong on. And I'm like, what? And he wanted me to like take my clothes off or whatever and bathe in that little puddle where the cow's like drinking and he's in there with his Speedo. I was like, I'm all right, I'll just stay dirty for a few more days. But they were being so hospitable. They really were. It was amazing. I'll never see those people again, unfortunately, because communication wasn't what it is now. But that has happened all over the world. The poorest people on earth, economically, maybe, have been so giving. In Egypt, it's horribly poor in Cairo, but people were so opening. They would just have me in their house. They couldn't speak to me, they didn't know me, but I was with someone, I would be with a priest or someone that they respected, and they would just invite me in as well. People are just nice. It may be like that in Korea, I don't know. I've only been to Korea for a few days, but I imagine that you have nice people and not nice people pretty much everywhere. But I would say that being hospitable is not only something that's just nice and makes people feel happy and loved and things like that, but it's also kind of God's commandment for how we approach our life. Are we giving back to people? Are we being open to other people? Are we being loving to receive anyone? I don't think Jesus really wants you to have a wedding and not invite your family, but what he wants you to do is think about these people that are poor and that are sick and that are hurting, and do something for them. Be there for them, and not in a way that like you're great and they're low and you have to reach down and help them. In fact, he's actually saying it's the opposite. You sit at the last seat, they're at the first seat, and maybe they actually end up helping you. They, us, them. I hate that language. We're all kind of together. So that would be Jesus' focus in here. Be a good guest, but be a good host. Not just in how you have people in your home or how you act when you go to people's homes, but in your whole life. Put yourself in a place where others come before you, and you will, what does he say? I'll read it from the scriptures. Basically, you will be blessed if you help those who don't have the means to repay you. You will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. And those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. So, that being said, in church, in your personal life, and whatever it is, don't just sit in the background. That's not where you're not getting away with just sitting there being humble. I'm just sitting here humble. I'm not doing anything. I'm not volunteering for anything. That's not what I'm saying. But when you do volunteer, or when you are doing nothing, or whatever it is you're doing, do it with a sense of humbleness. Because really, God has given us this day. God has given us this feast of life. God has given us all this. We didn't really do anything to deserve it. We didn't do anything to deserve this day. We didn't deserve anything to deserve all of the blessings we have had. It's all been from God. So if you have that perspective, God will naturally make you more humble when you focus on God. So take that with you. I've spoken quite a while now. We're going to have some worship time. Like I said earlier, the point of being here today isn't just to listen to me and hear funny stories. The point of here, you guys can come on up. The point here is to hear the word of God and then to respond. So now is your time to respond. Think about your life. Think about those people in your circles of influence that maybe you could reach out to better. Think about the times you've been judgmental towards others and reevaluate if that was really worth it. And just try to hear whatever God has for you during this time of worship. So that'll be that.